Okay, we are going to begin some warm-up. This is 4-voice warm-up. We'll do it in 200 words per minute for just in 15. We have Mr. Handweiler for the plaintiff and Mr. DeAnthony for defense. I am plaintiff attorney, Mr. Handweiler.
I am, I'm the witness.
In the court, I'm defense attorney, Mr. DeAnthony. Reading in what?
15.
Okay. Begins with a question by Mr. DeAnthony. For the record, Ms. Sharp, what is your occupation, ma'am?
I'm an LVN.
And your present employment?
Charter Hospital at Corona.
How long have you been there?
About 6 years.
And were you employed there in September of 1991?
Yes, I was.
And you've given a deposition in this case regarding Nancy Lynch, who was a patient there. Do you have any recollection of Mrs. Lynch?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us where in the hospital were you working in September of 1991?
I was working in ITU, that's intensive treatment unit.
What was your shift?
I work graveyard, which is from 11:30 to 7.
Okay, and who was working the shift just before you?
That would be the PM shift. I can't recollect who was working.
Are you still working ITU?
No, I'm not.
But in September of 1991, you were working from 11:30 to 7:30 a.m.?
Yes, that's correct.
And I put the original record in front of you there. I understand you have a couple of entries in the record, do you?
Yes, I do.
Would you be able to find those entries for me, please? The first entry, and tell us the date and time.
Yes, I found them.
Okay, can you tell us the date and time you made the entry, please?
Okay, that was on 9/13 and it was at 12 midnight.
Did you say 9:14?
9/13.
9:13. And what is the time again?
That was at 12 midnight.
12 midnight. And you said Mrs. Lynch from the adult service in ITU at that time?
Yes, that's correct.
And you charted at midnight on the 13th, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You noted the bear charting,
Yes, that's correct.
and the B would stand for what? Behavior?
Behavior.
And you indicated, quote, I know that I should have talked with staff, not, or should be, not the other patients, unquote. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I just had something happen, unquote, and then an assessment.
Right.
You indicated that she was anxious at onset of one-on-one. What is one-on-one?
That was myself talking to Nancy, who is the one-on-one conversation.
And that is a dialogue, again, between you and the patient.
Yes, that's correct.
With writer, who would have been yourself,
Correct.
but became more relaxed as interaction continued. No SI at this time. What is SI?
Suicidal ideation.
All right, while she was reviewed for suicidal ideation,
No, that's correct.
and you say orientate to unit,
Yes.
and her room, went to bed, and then under I, monitor closed during the night on a suicide risk.
Yes.
Now, what did you mean by monitor closed?
Every 5 minutes.
Okay, and why was that being done in this case?
Just as a precaution.
Did you receive any information regarding her transfer from adult services to ITU that she was having suicidal ideation from the time of transfer, if you remember?
I can't really remember.
Do you have any information from adult services regarding her transfer to ITU that she was being disruptive?
She was being disruptive upstairs.
You recall that?
Yes.
Then you indicated under R, that stands for?
That's like a result.
Result for your meeting with her at least about 30 minutes after retiring to bed, and then you signed it?
Yes.
Okay, and then you would have been present during the remainder of the shift,
That's correct.
and there would have been another individual working with you?
Yes.
And they would have checked if you weren't checking on Mrs. Lynch?
That's correct.
Now, this room Mrs. Lynch had, was it a room for a single or a double patient?
All these rooms are for double patients.
In ITU?
Yes.
Do you know if there was another patient in that room?
I can't recollect.
Now, we have a second note by you. I believe it says bear. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and under the B, it says, may I have a cigarette? I'm feeling so much better this morning. And then under the A, slept through the night, awake at 6 a.m., relaxed, anxiety level down. Does that mean reduced?
Yes.
Feeling remorseful about last night, but willing to work on issues. Then you have under I, continue to monitor close. Encouraged patient to write in her journal or paper what she's feeling. Just why did you feel you should monitor her close?
Just as a precaution.
And was there anything that occurred during the time that you were there present, the evening from the 12 o'clock notes you made up until the 6 p.m. notes you made that indicate any suicidal ideations on her part?
Absolutely no.
Explained reduced level and slept through the night, and I signed the note.
That's correct.
And is that, as far as you know, the only contact you had with this Mrs. Lynch in the hospital?
That is true.
Anything you remember other than what is on the document here?
No.
There was something to do with the rings being from her on her rings. Is that something regarding ITU, putting a patient into ITU?
Right, that goes on all patients. It was not just her, but every patient that comes in.
What is that? That they take that ring from them
Yes.
and they put it in a safe place?
Yes.
When you come on duty from your shift, do you take a report from the nurses that are in your section before they leave?
Yes, you do.
And then you start with the patients?
That's correct.
Now, the report you take, is that where they describe to you the patients that are present in ITU and the condition of those patients?
Yes.
And it is visual reports?
It's visual. Sometimes it's taped,
Okay.
but the majority of time it is visual.
So before you started your shift, you're brought up to speed as to each of the patients in your section.
That's correct.
Is that something that is done in hospitals for the benefit of the hospital?
Yes, it is.
Is that something that's done in nursing in any hospital?
Absolutely.
Now, my understanding is Mrs. Lynch, when she was transferred to ITU, transferred voluntarily, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. These visual reports, Mrs. Sharp, the one that you got concerning Nancy Lynch, you don't know what that was about, do you?
No, I don't.
In fact, the only thing you have a memory about is that concerning Nancy Lynch is a vague memory you mentioned, is that there was a patient who left against medical advice. Is that correct?
Yes, I remember. That's correct.
You don't have an independent memory of Nancy Lynch?
No, I couldn't identify her.
Okay, in this case concerning the rings, aren't I correct that Nancy Lynch asked the hospital to take her rings rather than the hospital asking her?
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I had nothing to do with that, so I can't answer that.
Why don't you take a look at the chart to see if I'm correct?
Do you know where this would be charted?
Yes, the evening in ITU, line 29, one entry at 2300 hours by Nurse Reed. Do you see that?
Yes.
Does it say, and I'm starting in the middle here, quote, stated to charge nurse that she wanted staff to keep her rings.
Yes, I see that.
Okay, you mentioned that there was no suicide ideation between midnight and 6 a.m.
That's correct.
Am I correct? She was asleep during most of that time.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have the suicidal watch sheet that's in that chart?
I wouldn't if you took that out.
I wonder if we took that out. I think we did. We've marked it Exhibit 1A, Mrs. Sharp. Is this the sheet you were talking about?
Yes, it is.
And it reflects that Mrs. Lynch was looked in on every 5 minutes during her stay at the ITU or the lock-in?
Yes, it does.
Now, you have different suicide watches there at Charter. At that time, you had a high suicide watch, low suicide watch. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And low required the patient, or looking in on the patient, making sure they were every 15 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Was she on the high?
She was on the high.
On the high. Oh, you mentioned she was disruptive before she came upstairs or from upstairs to downstairs, wherever the lockup is. How do you know that?
I don't know, other than what was in the chart when I received her. On the unit, she was not disruptive.
I see, but you said she was transferred to the unit because she was disruptive.
It would be written in her chart, or I would get a report on it stating she was disruptive. I would have received that prior to her coming down.
Why? Don't you remember the correspondence?
Not offhand, no.
How were you able to testify she was disruptive?
Only what was on the chart.
When did you look on the chart?
What do you mean by did I look on the chart?
This morning you testified she was disruptive.
As for the reason for being taken down,
This morning in court you testified that before they brought her to ITU, the reason they brought her there, I thought you testified, was she was disruptive.
yes,
Okay, did you review the chart to make that determination that she was disruptive at this time before you testified here in court?
yeah.
When did you review it?
When we talked in the office,
When we talked?
yes.
When was that?
Back when we did the deposition and we went over it.
Does it say she was disruptive?
No, I can't see where it documents.
You can't say where it documents, is that right?
No, I can't.
Nurse Sharp, you were working the next night, were you not? The night of the 13th?
that I was working on the 13th, the night of the.
Right, you worked that night, correct?
Yes, if it was a weekday.
It was a Friday.
Okay, then I was working, that's correct.
And you remember the fire alarm being tripped?
I remember the fire alarm going off.
Do you remember the fire department coming to the hospital?
Yes.
You didn't see Nancy Lynch that night, did you?
No, she was no longer on the ITU, and I had nothing else to do with her.
You don't know about any difficulty that they had concerning her that night?
No, I don't.
Being out of the hospital and wanting to come back in or not wanting to come back in?
Vague as to time, does she mean during her shift?
I mean at any time on the late evening of the 13th and the early hours of the 14th. Do you know of any difficulty that existed with the hospital staff trying to get Nancy Lynch, trying to get back from the lawn area into the building?
No.
Okay, now it was your responsibility as a nurse, and I believe you did it here, to record on the chart whether or not the patient was or was not suicidal, correct?
That's correct.
And when you wrote the words monitor close, you mean that she could be treated as a high suicide risk, correct?
Yes,
You never,
as a precaution.
whatever the reason, that's what you mean when you made the entry?
Yes, right.
You have put a hold on patient?
Yes.
I have nothing further. Thank you, Mrs. Sharp.
Mr. DeAnthony.
Excuse me, maybe?
No, it's my turn.
No.
Columbo always paused at the door, remember? One more question.
Oh, yeah, by the way,
I'm not that good, so I'll give up.
Ms. Sharp, you remember getting a deposition February of this year?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You indicated to us that you got a visual report on Nancy from Nurse Hagstrom,
Hagstrom. Yes, that's correct.
and at that time you had received the chart as well as a visual report.
Yes.
Your Honor, this is all leading.
Yes, it is. Do this without leading.
Was the nurse on duty in ITU before you were in ITU, Ms. Hagstrom?
No, she was a nurse on duty in ITU.
She was bringing Miss Lynch down to ITU?
That's correct.
Would they have given you a report on Mrs. Lynch?
Yes.
She would have given you Mrs. Lynch's chart as well?
It would have come. It may not have necessarily come with her at that particular time, but we had to get the chart.
And this thing about her being disruptive upstairs, was that something you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Okay, I want to show you a document which is marked, is it 3, regarding the rings. You wrote an entry in the chart regarding the rings. In here, can you tell us whose handwriting that is? Can you identify that?
3's the shift report.
Yes, Your Honor. It indicates asked to put her ring in safe. When asked if there was a problem with her husband, she said, no, if something happens to me, I want my children to have these. Do you remember saying that?
No.
Or would you have had this? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I want my children to have these and not be robbed like I was. Excuse me, do you know anything about a robbery or anything?
No.
Do you remember seeing this?
No.
Okay, I think that's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Handweiler.
Nurse Sharp, you had a one-on-one with Nancy, meaning you and Nancy were together so that you had a chance to evaluate and assess her condition, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Am I correct also that the usual time period that you would spend with a patient to determine whether or not they were or were not suicidal in a one-on-one setting would be anywhere from 13 minutes to an hour, and that it could be longer?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mrs. Sharp, do you know if this time period would be any different than any other areas of the hospital versus the ITU lookup?
I don't quite understand.
The time period you talk to patients to determine if they are suicidal.
It doesn't have a time period on it, so it could be any length of time.
Thank you, nothing further.
Mr. Handweiler.
Nothing more.
Thank you, Mrs. Sharp. You can step down. May the witness be excused, counsel.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Allison Evans?
Allison Evans, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please take a seat at the witness stand. Would you state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
My name is Allison Evans, Evans.
Thank you.
Ms. Evans, what is your occupation?
I'm a registered nurse.
And for how long have you been a registered nurse, ma'am?
Oh, since 1975.
Okay, and are you presently employed
Yes, yes, sir.
as a registered nurse?
Yes, sir.
Where at, ma'am?
Charter Hospital in Corona.
How long have you been in charter in Corona?
6 years this month.
Okay, and in September of 1980, strike that. In September of 1991, What was your position at Charter as a registered nurse?
My title was a nursing coordinator for the intensive treatment unit, which is a locked unit.
Okay, and what shift did you occupy at that time in September of 1991?
Day shift.
That would be from 7 a.m. to 3:30?
Correct.
And you've had your deposition taken in this case?
Yes, sir.
And you've had an opportunity to look at the record of Mrs. Lynch?
In my deposition.
And testimony, you have had an entry by you, have you not?
Yes, sir.
May you take a moment to find the entry you may have made?
I have 2 entries.
Okay, tell us the date and time of the first entry.
My first entry is 9/13, 8 o'clock in the morning.
And that's in ITU section?
Excuse me?
That is in ITU?
Yes, sir.
And I see you charted BEAR techniques.
That's correct.
You indicated in your note of 8 a.m. on the 13th patient regarding her pending discharge, discussing her feelings of emotions. She requires more help, but angry. She was transferred to ITU. And you indicate as far as assessment, anxious. Then under the I, you have one-on-one with staff. Did you mean that one-on-one between you and Mrs. Lynch?
That's correct.
As you sit here today, do you remember Mrs. Lynch?
No, I don't.
You indicate MD notified, and I can't quite make out the rest of that. Can you help me?
Under the ART, which means the response of the patient, willing to discuss questions with MD.
Okay, do you remember what it was you said, MD notified?
Yeah, that is MD notified at that stage because she wanted to return to the open adult unit upstairs.
And to do that, you would need an MD order?
That's correct.
Did you come to learn that she was a patient of Dr. Bromley, but Dr. Bromley was not in town, and her care had been taken over by Dr. Moore if needed?
That's correct.
Did you talk to Dr. Moore that morning
Yes, sir.
on the 13th?
Uh-huh.
What information did you give Dr. Moore?
I just, as I recall, according to, I've written here that
Excuse me, Nurse Evans, for a moment.
Yes?
I'm not sure if she's talking about the entry or a specific independent memory.
Well, you can make inquiry on this information if this is refreshing your recollection.
Do you have a recollection of a discussion with the doctor after you make the AM note on the 13th?
I recall the doctor, to talk to the doctor to come see her.
Do you remember where the doctor was when you called him?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, do you remember telling him the reason you wanted him to see her?
I remember talking to Dr. Moore and asking him to come in and see the patient.
And as you indicated to us earlier, the basis for you calling the doctor was Mrs. Lynch wanted to leave ITU and go back to adult services.
That's correct.
And at this point in time, did Dr. Moore come and see the patient?
Yes, sir.
Is that in ITU?
Yes, sir.
Were you present during the discussion of Dr. Moore and Mrs. Lynch?
No, sir.
And then we have a second entry by you, I believe at 9, is that correct?
Yes, I wrote 12 noon.
And that entry follows 2 entries by Dr. Moore.
Yes, sir.
So I take it Dr. Moore saw the patient on at least 2 occasions that morning, and then a decision was made to transfer the patient back to adult services.
That's correct.
Was that Dr. Moore's decision?
Yes, sir.
And so you made the note at that time at noon saying, patient very concerned regarding her being refused to stay in hospital for counseling treatment. And although she denies wanting to harm herself at this time, she admits feeling out of control last PM, when facing the issues from her past. Patient anxious to return to AS, adult services. Is that correct?
Yes.
And counseling groups in progress states, I'm not ready, go over to the next page. I'm not ready to go home. I know I need to work on my problems. I don't want to be treated like a baby.
Okay, this will be some deposition practice. We have Ms. Egan for the plaintiff, Mr. Oldman for defense 1, and Mr. Gomez for defense 2. I know it says differently, but.
So how
Okay,
are we-
so what?
So this is, you're the witness.
Yeah, I know.
You're old,
So you're Oldman
and I'm
and you're
Gomez.
Gomez.
All right.
Okay. And 14, please, and it begins with a question by Ms. Egan for the record.
How long are we going to go?
I'll stop it. Okay. For the record, good afternoon, Ms. Wilson.
Good afternoon.
I'm just going to ask you some questions about the week prior to September 10. Now, the night this happened between Leslie Ortiz and my client, Martha Olson, what happened at Leslie's house?
Yes?
And you said that is Leslie Daniel's girlfriend, first of all?
Yes.
How long have they been going out?
I'm not sure.
A year?
Probably more than that.
And are you and Leslie close?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a good friend of Leslie?
Yes.
Even outside of her relationship with your brother?
Yes.
So when Leslie was telling Martha to leave, are you standing right there with Leslie as she was?
No, but I was in the room though.
You were in the room?
Yes.
Was it in the living room?
No, it was in the bedroom.
And Martha was loud because there was some type of spider inside the room?
I'm not sure.
So you don't know what the issue was?
No, I just know that they was talking.
And how many times did Leslie ask Martha to leave?
I only heard once.
And did Martha then get up to leave?
She said something. That's when the fight happened.
Okay, and how far away were you during the conversation that Leslie was having with Martha? You may use anything in this conference room to estimate the distance.
From about over there, the little wall, to about right here.
From this wall?
Yes,
And from where you are right now?
yes.
And the distance between that is what? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think the table in this conference room is 18 feet. It could be a little more than 18 feet.
And this was in a bedroom?
Yes.
Correct? And were you sitting on the bed or sitting someplace else?
I was sitting on the bed and they were by the front door.
By the front door of the bedroom?
No, by the front door of the house.
And how many people were there?
There was Leslie, my brother, me, Martha, Carlos, Sam, and I think one other guy that I didn't know.
Who is Sam?
One of their friends.
And you witnessed Martha and Leslie arguing, correct?
Yes.
While you were sitting on the bed?
No, I had already gone out of the room.
Okay, we're gonna repeat that warm-up at 210 words per minute again. And same attorneys, Ms. Egan for the plaintiff, Mr. Oldman for defense 1, and Mr. Gomez for defense 2, and begins with a question by Ms. Egan for the record. Good afternoon, Ms. Wilson.
Good afternoon.
I'm just going to ask you some questions about the week prior to September 10th. Now, the night this happened between Leslie Ortiz and my client, Martha Olson, what happened at Leslie's house?
Yes.
And you had said that is Leslie Daniels' girlfriend, first of all?
Yes.
How long have they been going out?
I'm not sure.
A year?
Probably more than that.
And are you and Leslie close?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a good friend of Leslie?
Yes.
Even outside of her relationship with your brother?
Yes.
So when Leslie was telling Martha to leave, are you standing right there with Leslie as she was?
No, but I was in the room though.
You were in the room?
Yes.
Was it in the living room?
No, it was in the bedroom.
And was Martha loud because there was some type of spider inside the room?
I'm not sure.
So you don't know what the issue was?
No, I just know that they was talking.
Okay, and how many times did Leslie ask Martha to leave?
I only heard once.
Did Martha then get up to leave?
She said something. That's when the fight happened.
Okay, and how far away were you during the conversation that Leslie was having with Martha? You may use anything in this conference room to estimate the distance.
From about over there, the little wall, to about right here.
Okay, from this wall?
Yes.
And from where you are right now?
Yes.
And the distance between that is what? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think the table in this conference room is 18 feet. It could be a little
And-
more than 18 feet.
And this was in a bedroom,
Yes.
correct? And were you sitting on the bed or sitting someplace else?
I was sitting on the bed and they were by the front door.
By the front door of the bedroom?
No, by the front door of the house.
And how many people were there?
There was Leslie, my brother, me, Martha, Carlos, Sam, and I think one other guy that I didn't know.
Who is Sam?
One of their friends.
And you witnessed Martha and Leslie arguing, correct?
Yes.
While you were sitting on the bed?
No, I had already gone out of the room.